morning. Merry Christmas. Yeah, in case we don't see you guys, if you've got other plans, hopefully we'll see you Christmas Eve. But if not, I am so glad that you've been able to come on out and join us for a continuation of our Christmas Miracles series. We've been looking at over each week in December, we've been talking about how God is unleashing His power into this world for our greatest good, to bring hope to humanity. And so we've looked at the genealogies and we've looked at the prophecies of the Old Testament related to the Messiah. Last week we looked at the virgin birth. And today we're going to take a quick peek at the Star of Bethlehem, the miracle of the star. I think it's easy in our fast-paced New Yorker mindset to rush through life. Physically, we become exhausted. Mentally, it feels as if the servers are full. Emotionally, we get so far strung out that it feels like we just need a break for our souls to catch up with us. This is normal, it seems, in our day and age. And I think it's easy in times like this for us to wonder whether or not God is in any of it, whether He's aware, whether He's in any way connected or dialed into my normal experiences throughout my day or week. I think that God is in fact involved in the day-to-day moments that happen in each of our lives. I think that He is in fact there all along. We just simply often miss it. I think that God is in fact using His power, even in the details of our lives all the time. And that maybe we can see His activity if we look for it, if we pay attention and we try to see it. It's sometimes maybe hard to see, but I think we can. I think that's a little bit about what our story this morning, taken from Matthew chapter 2, is all about. Matthew chapter 2. You can open up in a Bible. The Bibles are scattered throughout. We're going to be reading it through. It's a familiar text, and then later on we'll be jumping back into it for just a couple of verses. Matthew chapter 2, starting in verse 1, the visit of the Magi. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report to me, so that I too may go and worship him." Of course, he was lying. And they had heard the king. After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star had been seen. When it rose, went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. When they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. We're going to do something very different here this morning. We're going to be introducing you guys to a video. It's an extended video, and it's going to introduce to you this idea of some possible understanding of the Star of Bethlehem. And then I'm going to come back up and I'm going to kind of draw some conclusions from this video. But it's an extended video. It's an older video now, but it's got some great content. So I hope you are challenged by it.
Because I'm going to be your guide to one of the great mysteries, the Star of Bethlehem. This has been a mystery for 2,000 years since the original events, and people have wondered about it for centuries, whether the star was a real event or whether it was something made up by the early church. And really that's the two basic positions people have taken historically. Believers, some people believe the Bible is true and they say, well, the star's in the Bible, so I'm good with it. They don't worry about it. But there are other people who have a more critical attitude towards the star, and they read the story and they say, wait a minute, That star is described as doing things that stars can't do. That must have been made up. It's a myth created by the early church to add weight to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. Well, those are the two pole positions. We're not going to take either one of those this evening. What we're going to do is to treat the star more like a puzzle or a mystery to be solved. And we're going to go through the Bible and find all the clues we can there. And we're going to compare those against the facts we know from history and see if there's a matchup. And I think you're going to find this completely fascinating. Kepler puzzled out the 3 laws of planetary motion in the early 1600s. Now, those laws hold today. They're math, and they're the same laws that NASA uses and the ESA uses to predict where planets will be. Kepler was a religious guy, so the first thing he did, once he discovered these laws, he starts cranking those laws, trying to find what? The Star of Bethlehem. He wrote 2 books on it, but Kepler missed the star. The reason he missed the star is he was looking in the skies at the wrong years. Here's the problem. Kepler had a mistaken understanding of first century history. He thought a very important man died on a certain date, and he was just wrong. The very important man was King Herod, the same King Herod who tried to kill the baby Jesus. So obviously Herod was alive when Jesus was born, and Kepler believed that Herod died in 4 BC, and so he only looked in earlier years. He looked in 5 and 6 and 7 BC for the Star of Bethlehem. When you look in those years, you don't find much. But we have new knowledge. A man took an interest in this question of when Herod died. And this gentleman went and looked at manuscripts from Josephus. He looked at in the British Museum and our museums here in the United States, and he found that all the oldest manuscripts, every one that dates before 1544, all of them are consistent with Herod having died in 1 BC. And that opens up the possibility for us to look in the years 2 and 3 BC for the star. And when you look there, the sky explodes. When I began really pushing hard, I wanted to go further. So that means I had to really puzzle it through. So I went to Matthew, and I treated it like it was the Bible. I mean, that was the real set of clues right there. And most researchers don't pay that much attention to Matthew, only to the extent they see, oh, there was a star. I wanted to go through and see, well, let's mine this for data. I'm looking for data points here. I'm looking for clues to solve a mystery. And so I went through Matthew very, very carefully and found that if you pay close attention, there are 9 characteristics of the star. That's a fair amount of data. When you have that much data, you can quickly eliminate a whole lot of things that other people are proposing. Why? Well, because I'm paying attention to Matthew. And I'm very conservative, too, about this issue. So if we find something in the sky that, maybe fulfills 8, I'm going to say, that's interesting, but it's not the star. It has to completely line up with Scripture for me to think it's really the star. When you go outside and look up tonight, you're going to see just this huge canopy of stars. We often visualize it as a sphere over the earth. And those stars, most of them in that sphere, they move very, very slowly. Of course, it's really us that's moving, but the earth rotates, and it makes the stars appear to rise in the east and set in the west. Right? Most stars then are in the fixed class, but then there are the wandering stars, the planets. And the planets move around through the field of fixed stars. They do interesting things. So might one of these wandering stars have something to do with Messiah's star? Well, that's going to be our working hypothesis. Anybody tell me what's the largest planet in the solar system? It's Jupiter. Jupiter's named for the highest god in the Roman pantheon. So might Jupiter, which has been known as the king planet from ancient times because it's the biggest one, might Jupiter have something to do with Messiah's star? Well, that's going to be a hypothesis that we can test. Now, it's not going to be enough to have a kingly name. Jupiter's going to have to do some pretty peculiar things to satisfy all 9 points from the Bible. So did Jupiter do that? So now I'm going to take you and show you the starry dance. We're going to go to the sky and see what really happened 2,000 years ago. What I'm going to be showing you through these screens is not something that approximates what things looked like in ancient times. It's quite an accurate reproduction of the positions of the planets because we can actually calculate that. I'm choosing to view from Babylon because I believe that's probably where the Magi came from. That's the Eastern school. And now most everybody in this room knows that Babylon's in Iraq. People didn't used to know that, but now everybody's very familiar. It's about 60 miles south of Baghdad, right? We're viewing 3 BC. It's September. This is the compass rose. It says east. And this red line is the path of Jupiter through the sky. I've turned it on just to make it easier for you to follow Jupiter. So let's take a look. And we see Jupiter rising. And as I zoom in, you'll find that there are 2 objects there. This is Jupiter. The smaller object is a star. It has a name. It's called Regulus. That's the same word root as our word regal. The Babylonians called Regulus Sharu, which means king. The Romans called Regulus Rex, which means king. This is the king star. We now have the king planet and the king star coming into very close approach. If they were watching, they might have seen something like this 2 or 3 times before. So somewhat rare, somewhat interesting. Yeah, make a note of it. That's what they were into. But probably wouldn't send them to Jerusalem. Probably not. But of course, there's more. Jupiter goes like this. It slows up. It doesn't blink like that. And does a very shallow little circle. Kind of a little like that. Yeah, it kind of looks like a halo over somebody. So did Jupiter do that at an interesting time? Well, yes, it did. Let's take a look. I'll animate Jupiter and let it drop a tail so you can watch it. Jupiter passed Regulus, changed its mind, stopped and went back for a second close approach. That's 2. Passed Regulus again, changed its mind, and came back for a third close approach. Triple conjunction, much more rare. Of course, there's more. 12 Jewish tribes. One produces Messiah. Which one? Anybody know? It's Judah. That's right. What's the animal symbol for the tribe of Judah? That's correct. Okay, good. Let me take you to the first book of the Bible. Look at Genesis 49 for a prediction of the coming Messiah. We read, "You're a lion's cub, O Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion, he crouches and lies down. Like a lioness, who dares rouse him? The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he comes to whom the scepter belongs, and the obedience of the nations is his." If we look at the sky and turn on the constellations, we'll see that Jupiter has been crowning Regulus right here in the constellation Leo the Lion. Well, now I can see an association with the Jewish nation. I can see King, King, King in Leo. Well, that's pretty interesting. That's pretty cool. But there's something even bigger that I got to show you. That I'm going to go to Revelation 12 and show you a corner that I think I understand. Great and wondrous sign appeared in heaven. What is the sign? Well, I want you to watch this. It's a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon at her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. She gave birth to a son, a male child, will rule all the nations with an iron scepter. We now understand what he's describing is the birth of Jesus, but he sees it in the heavens. What follows Jupiter into the sky as we animate the sky is Virgo, the Virgin. And she's clothed in the sun.
In September of 3 BC, when Jupiter is coming in close conjunction with Regulus, the king planet and the king star, that happening in Leo, the lion representing the nation of Judah, the tribe of Judah, that rises in the sky, and behind it rises Virgo, the Virgin, and she's clothed in the sun, and she has the moon at her feet. It's exactly what John described in Revelation 12. It's what he saw in his vision.
So I'm looking at all this stuff happening, and everything's just, really moving me, and I'm thinking, man, this may be the birth of Jesus. And then I thought, wait a minute, maybe not. Because Jewish people and a lot of Christian people believe that life begins at conception. So I thought to myself, well, maybe this is the conception of Jesus. Maybe this is the Annunciation, when Gabriel appeared to Mary, and she said, "Be it done unto me." Well, you can test that. I thought, well, let's just wind forward 9 months and see if there's anything interesting happening in the sky. So that's what I did. So let's jump forward 9 months. Now, we're still viewing from Babylon because I don't think they've left yet. It's now 2 BC. It's June. It's 9 months later. Jupiter has finished crowning Regulus in Leo and is now moving backwards through the constellations like it always does. You can see it setting in the west, of course, like everything does because of the rotation of the Earth. Incidentally, if you're in Babylon and you're looking west, what are you looking toward? Israel. Okay. Now I'm going to show you something that you can see in any planetarium around the world. Even if they don't believe in Jesus or the Bible or anything, they're going to show you this at Christmas. Because all planetaria do Christmas shows. That's the only way they can get you in there, right? And they always show this event because this event is simply so spectacular. Whether they believe in God or not, they're going to show you this shot. I'm going to zoom in because I want to show you guys, I'm going to take you in on the secret of what's happening here. I'm going to zoom in, way in. Until finally, I get those two objects separated. One of them's Jupiter, the other one's another planet. You're going to tell me which one, too. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's the mother planet. Venus is the mother planet. So we have Jupiter, the king planet, and Venus, the mother planet, coming into very close conjunction. That seems kind of pregnant, doesn't it? It was two stars stacked on top of each other, too close together to separate with the naked eye. And so to an observer, it appeared to be the brightest star anyone alive had ever seen. We know the math, and so I can tell you that no one alive had ever seen a star that bright. That was it. I believe the Star of Bethlehem was the brightest star. So we've seen the birth of the king in the sky. We've seen the brightest star. But now we have the issue of it being in the south. Remember when they were traveling from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, the star is said to have been before them, ahead of them. So it would have to be in the southern sky. So let's go back to the sky, see if Jupiter did that. They've now traveled to Jerusalem. It's November. I've given them some time for travel. This is south. Remember, Bethlehem is due south of Jerusalem. And at 7 in the morning, sure enough, there in the sky, in the southern sky, is Jupiter over the little town of Bethlehem. Now the hard part, though. Can a star stop? I'll animate Jupiter and let it drop a tail. And there you see it. Sure enough, Jupiter comes to a full stop and reverses course over the little town of Bethlehem. But I want to show you another screen that's more fun because I can throw dates with it. The date when it stopped over the little town of Bethlehem, 1225 of 2 BC. Does that date sound familiar? Well, Mr. Larson, you mean they went down there on Christmas? Well, it turns out that's true. Am I saying that Jesus was born on 1225? No, I'm not saying that at all. Absolutely. In fact, I don't think anyone thinks that. No, what I'm saying is that is quite possibly the date of the first Christmas. Did it have any meaning to them? No, it had no meaning. The date had no meaning to them because they didn't even use our calendar system. But it does have meaning to us. It could well be assigned to us. Let me give you the chronology now. In September of 3 BC, Jupiter crowns Regulus in Leo. Up rises Virgo, clothed in the sun, new moon, birth at her feet, Rosh Hashanah, Jewish New Year. 9 months later, the biggest planet goes together with the brightest planet to make the brightest star anyone alive had ever seen. Where? Right over Jerusalem as it sets. The Magi ride. They get there sometime around November. They go to Herod and they say, we've seen the star. Where's the baby king? Herod says, Bethlehem. So they're leaving the gates of Jerusalem to go to Bethlehem, 5-mile trek. And they look up, and there's the star. There's Jupiter, right over this little town of Bethlehem. One of the guys, who's the guy who does the math for the group, he's going, wait. It's in full retrograde. It's stopped right over the little town of Bethlehem. They ride down to Bethlehem on 1225, 2 BC. We know that's the date because that's when the star stopped. They're carrying gifts, remember? Frankincense, gold, and myrrh. They find the baby boy. Is he living in a manger? No. He's moved. He's in a house now. He's described in Greek as a paidion. He's a toddler. They find the baby boy and they present these fabulous gifts to him on what turns out to be the first Christmas, 1225 of 2 BC. And now,
The Magi were obviously looking for something. How did they know? Why do they make such an unusual appearance in our story? Why now, at this particular time in history? Why were Magi from the East looking for the King of the Jews? And why did they present those particular gifts to him? See, it's begging for answers when you come across this text. I think some of these might be related to an ancient prophecy, a prophecy by Balaam in Numbers 24. He said, I see him now, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star will come out of Jacob. A scepter will rise out of Israel. He will crush the foreheads of Moab, the skulls of the people of Sheth. Edom will be conquered. Seir, his enemy, will be conquered. But Israel will grow strong. A ruler will come out of Jacob and destroy the survivors of the city. You see there, what if Balaam, who some have said was one of the early Magi, what if Balaam and this prophecy had gone into the lore of the Magi from the East? And what if Daniel, who was also one of the Magi from the East, we spent a little bit of time looking at Daniel's prophecy a couple of weeks ago. What if Daniel's prophecy was also involved? That might explain why they were looking at this particular time. In fact, you could even line up the 3 gifts with Daniel's prophecy as to why those particular gifts were brought. See, it is conceivable at least that the Magi were the intellectual descendants of Daniel. He had been in Babylon. He was one of their chief wise men. And so the Magi now have a history and a culture and a skill set that is simply different than anyone else in the world. And it seems as if God, now listen, I'm horoscopes, I think they're garbage. Astrology, I think it's garbage. Yet here we have God talking to the Magi in a language that only they would get. And there's something intriguing to me about this. It's as if God can take your unique circumstances. He can take your history, your background, your education, and he can speak to you in such a concrete way that you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is in fact talking to you. Interestingly, this is not in any way a typical kind of miracle. This isn't a violation of natural law in any way. This isn't supernatural. This is God working very much in the natural, but in extraordinary ways. I think that might be a little bit of what was going on here. Anyone else would have missed this. But the Magi could see it because they were looking for it. They were looking for it. They were hoping. They were searching the sky, awaiting the fulfillment of these things. There's a story about a little girl, she wanted to enter a Christmas drawing competition. And so Annie, she's 7 years old, a bundle of joy, and a local outdoor center was hosting this competition for all of the kids in town, and she wanted to enter it. And it had a prize and all of this kind of stuff, and she was very excited. And so the thing is, it's been a tough year for the family. Very tough year financially, in fact. So much so that the only gifts they were going to get were going to be a few that the grandparents could provide, and they didn't even have enough money to buy a Christmas tree. It was going to be a very lean Christmas this year. Well, her spirits aren't dampened. She enters this competition, and she draws this beautiful Christmas tree. And her mom says, "That's a beautiful tree, honey." And she goes, "Yeah, it's my friend's tree. Ellen, she's got a Christmas tree just like this in her house." And in all childhood innocence, she says, "I wish we could have a tree like that." Mother, of course, is cut to the heart. A kind of disappointment. When you disappoint your kids, it's a kind of pain that is unique. Well, the mother, she's all excited about the entry. The girl is all excited. So they enter the competition, and they all go down to the store, and they vote for their daughter. But there's hundreds of these drawings up. And so while they're there, the son, he looks out over these rows of fresh cut Christmas trees, and he says, "Hey, it's getting close to Christmas. Are we gonna get a Christmas tree?" The mom and dad look at each other with that knowing look, and the dad says, "No, son, not this year. Maybe next year. Maybe next year we'll get the tree." They go home a couple days later, and the other daughter, she says, they're sitting in the family room, and of course there's an empty spot where the tree ought to be. And she says, "Hey, where's the tree? We never got a tree. It's getting close. How's Santa going to know where to put the gifts?" "Oh, maybe another year, sweetheart." Now, of course, the parents are cut to the heart. The mother, that next morning, she's just thinking through all of the bad decisions and questioning everything that they have done, and how come they didn't do this, and maybe they should have done this, and maybe she should get a job, maybe they need to get more money, and all of these, just the second guessing and the hurt and the heartache that goes with a tough situation like this. That afternoon, the kids come bounding in after school, and they say, "Guess what? Annie won the competition." The mom says, "Really? Did you win first place?" She's like, No, I won third." Mom's like, "Third is really good, sweetheart. That's really good. I'm so proud of you." Then they say, "Guess what the prize is, Mom?" "A Christmas tree." And you go, "Oh, isn't that a cute story? It's so sweet." What do you think it spoke to that family? Based upon where they had been and what had been going on, was God involved in the details of their life? It certainly seems that way. But you see, it's just subtle enough that if you're not experiencing it yourself, you could very much play the part of the skeptic. You could say, "Oh no, come on. You can't start saying that God is in these sorts of things." The Magi, of course, they followed the star. They went and they experienced the interview with Herod, and then the star shows up again. What if they had been a few days late or a few days earlier? What if they left earlier, they got delayed, or what if they got distracted? I don't know. Who knows what the timeline was of getting to this moment at this time. But if they had missed it by a few days, they might have missed the next star. But of course they didn't. They saw, if this guy is right, Jupiter sitting over the town of Bethlehem. Easily could have missed, but they didn't. I'm sure this was just a coincidence, of course. Another story I read, it was about a young couple. They were very sad. because they had been married a few years now, no kids, having a real hard time getting pregnant. And all their Christmas cards coming from their other young friends were showing the new babies that were entering their lives. Each year it was getting more and more difficult because of the lack of a child. They were heartbroken. This particular Christmas day, they'd opened up gifts and they were together as a family. They had their dinner and they were around the living room at night, and they were all sort of talking about what they hoped God would do. And of course, this comes to the forefront of hope that what God would do in their lives. And together as a family, they went around the circle and they all prayed. They said, God, tonight, we're asking you that by this time next year, you would answer their prayers for a child. That you would answer their prayers. Now, they'd prayed countless times before. You know how these things happen. But this night, they prayed in a different way as a family together, and all of them were a witness to it. Well, you know, believe it or not, the new year comes. New doctors, new plan. She gets pregnant. They're all excited. It's going to be an amazing gift. She's due earlier in December, the upcoming year. Very, very exciting. Well, you know, that due date comes and goes. She's still pregnant. There's no movement whatsoever. Well, you know, she goes a week late, 2 weeks late. Now she's starting to think she might be the first woman to never actually give birth, to always carry the baby forever. Now they're approaching Christmas time. And finally, the doctor said, listen, we have to induce. We're just going to we got to move this thing along. So it's Christmas Eve, and, you know, they start the inducing process, and they're overwhelmed. They can't believe this. You know, it's going to be a Christmas Eve baby, though. That's kind of cool. And Christmas Eve comes and goes, no baby. Now it's Christmas Day. The day lingers on, and finally the doctors say, we can't keep doing this. We're going to have to go in by cesarean and actually take the baby out because it's too long now. We've got to finish this. So they say, yes, of course, they'll do it. And so sure enough, they do the cesarean. Everything is great. The baby's healthy. They're all happy. They go back home. It's a few weeks later. The grandmother now comes and she says, hey, do you realize that the baby's cesarean happened at the exact time of our prayer meeting? A year earlier? A year earlier, the exact time. Surely that's a coincidence, of course, right? Because it's just vague enough that of course it could be a coincidence, you see, but how do you think it was felt for that family? See, God works in the details in such a way. He's using His power in our lives all the time. And I fear we often miss it. He's creating moments for us time and again. Sometimes they're very, very subtle, but they are still God's power. Very different from the other miracles that we've been talking about. But still the unleashing of God's power for your greatest good and for the extension of your hope in Him. Others may not be able to see it, and you don't even need to prove it. But you know what happened if you're looking for it. You know what God was doing. You understand how He's been weaving these things together for just such a time. So be on the lookout for these things. Pay attention. When we talk to the kids, we say, you know, look for God sightings. That's what we tell the kids. Look for God sightings, meaning where is God working in your life and in the lives of people all around you? And you know, when you see them, when you get a glimpse of these God sightings, it brings such an amazing amount of affirmation to your walk with God. You start to see and know. You experience it. You know it to be the case. And when those moments happen, they are precious. They are sweet. And I think if we are not careful, if we are simply overwhelmed and too busy, if we're not paying attention, we'll miss it. Imagine what it would be like to wake up every single morning and say, God, give me spiritual eyes today. You open my eyes. Let me see how it is you're working in my life, in my midst, in my environment, in my circumstances. Let me see it every day. Imagine what it is we might see. How often God is actually at work. And then when you see those things, act. You know, I think about these magi. Imagine if they had just been stargazers, just checking things out. What if they never got on their camels and went? They would have missed the whole second, third, and fourth part of this story. They would have known something cool was happening. They might have even tried to convince others of it, but they would have missed experiencing it. They would have missed actually being in the movement of God's power, the flow of God's power. I think when God is is moving you in this direction, when he's saying, listen, do this thing and care for those people and serve in this ministry and give, that money away, follow the leading of God in those moments, you take that next step. Don't just stare at the stars and wonder what it means, but get into the flow of what God is doing. And not only will you experience that affirmation that comes when you know God is doing something, but imagine the affirmation it brings to the lives that you are now touching, that you're now impacting. Imagine how it is that if God is bringing these details together in such an incredible and miraculous way, imagine the impact it will have on the lives of the other people. Imagine Mary and Joseph knock on the door and all of a sudden the wise men show up. Imagine what it meant to them. Such an amazing encouragement because they acted, because they did what it was that God was calling them to do. We each can spend our Christmas season rushing from this thing to that thing and forgetting about the presence and the activity of God in our lives. Let's not do it. Let's spend each day here, in the next few weeks especially, but then throughout the year, spend our time asking God, show me what it is you're doing in our lives, how you're unleashing your power in all of the various details, how you're weaving it together. Would you pray with me? Lord, we're asking that you would help us to see your hand. Give us eyes to see and ears to hear. Give us a spiritual insight, unlike anything we've ever experienced before, so that we might see your power in ways we never imagined possible. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.